Members of the landless rural workers movement welcomed former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva at the Eli Vive Settlement to strengthen political alliance in view of the 2022 presidential elections. Russian and Ukrainian government authorities agreed to establish 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians trapped in the middle of the conflict. The Algerian government described as a betrayal against the Sahrawi people Spain's decision of granting Morocco autonomy over the territories of Western Sahara. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. In Brazil, members of the landless rural workers movement welcomed former President Luis Ignacio Lula da Silva in the Eli Vive Settlement with the aim of strengthening political alliance ahead of the 2022 presidential elections. More than 10,000 members of the landless rural workers movement gathered in this settlement, the largest agrarian reform area in the metropolitan region of the country, where they hosted the former president within the framework of a meeting marking the natural launch of the grassroots committees of the movements, created to work on the organization of workers and to promote the construction of a popular project for Brazil within the people. In neighborhoods of places of studies, churches, and cultural spaces. The program also includes the donation of 60 tons of products made by the landless families, which will be distributed between the March 20th and the March 21st in the neighborhoods of Londrina municipality located in the north of the state of Paraná. In Peru, President Pedro Castillo met with the relatives of the victims of two massacres for which former President Alberto Fujimori had been convicted. Fujimori was released from prison on Thursday by the Constitutional Court. At the meeting held at the government palace, President Castillo listened to the claims of indignation made by parents, siblings, and children of those targeted by an illegal squad, which either murder or disappear people suspected of having taken part in armed actions on the Fujimori administration. Voices of rejections inside and outside Peru have given way to different reactions, like that of Constitutional Court President Augusto Ferrero, who said the decision can be appealed at international courts. Gisela Ortiz, sister of one of the 10 students kidnapped, tortured, and assassinated by the squad, who served as culture minister under Castillo, said the families deserve justice.
State powers, but also the different institutions should get involved in these issues, because at the end of the day, what we want is to come out of these experiences strengthened. Since yesterday we have learned about this decision of the Constitutional Court of pardoning former President Fujimori on humanitarian grounds. We, the relatives, have expressed our indignation because we believe that the reasons for which the pardon was given in 2018 in an improper manner, violating the administrative process without a medical report to justify the humanitarian pardon, are still the same today. And the Supreme Court in 2018 ruled that this was an illegal pardon. Then we do not understand the reasoning because we do not know it yet from the Constitutional Court. However, we must say that it affects us in our rights as families to demand justice when one of the main political responsible for the death and disappearance of our relatives is granted freedom.
After learning of the Constitutional Court's decision granting a humanitarian pardon to former President Alberto Fujimori, Peruvian Deputy Justice Minister Juan Carrasco recalled the argument given in 2018 by the Human Rights Inter-American Court so that the former president would remain in prison.
That corrupt individuals and assassins should not be favored with any measure that will mean their release from prison. They should serve their full sentence and they should pay their civic dues.
On Friday, Chile saw the first protest in the historic Plaza de la Dignidad, Dignity Square, in the nation's capital. Since the inauguration of President Gabriel Boric, the head of state has been repeatedly criticized on social media and news agencies for the repression once again carried out by the Carabineros, Chile's infamous police force. Strong images of the Chilean security forces' actions returned to the scene when a demonstration for the political prisoners of the 2019 social unrest took place. 2 demonstrators were arrested and another was injured when he was rammed by a policeman and was left unconscious due to a contusion of the occipital bone. Several activist leaders and parliamentarians, including some of President Boric's political running mates, called for an urgent review and transformation of the police force. The Ministry of Education and the Board of Directors of the Confederation of Urban Teachers of Bolivia reached an agreement Friday night, which puts an end to the protests staged in recent days. As per the agreement, teachers lift all pressure measures and will be resuming all academic activities as of Monday. The agreement sets a higher budget for education, representing 10.8% of the nation's budget, a budget which will be further subjected to analysis by different work tables, and it sets the number of teaching positions under the current administration at 3,300. The Mexican Senate approved on Friday a recall referendum related to President Andrés Manuel López Obrador's terms in office until 2024, which has already begun to be debated between the president and government officials. The president will now be able to promote the consultation for the recall of his mandate, which will be discussed again next April 10th by the president himself. The head of state showed his approval during his regular morning press conference, where he assured that the approval of the reform is part of democracy. He says it will be possible from now on to qualify and decide if the head of state is governing the country correctly.
I welcome the approval of this reform because it has to do with democracy. Most people do not know because the National Electoral Institute is talking in an anti-democratic way. It is comparing against democracy, when they should be spreading all this procedure.
Let us take a short break now. Join us again after this. Welcome back to From the South. Russian and Ukrainian government authorities agreed to establish 10 humanitarian corridors to evacuate civilians trapped in the middle of the conflict. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Eli Vive reported that the corridors will be in operation in Kiev, Donetsk, Luhansk, and Kherson regions. According to the official, the evacuation route from Mariupol to Zaporozhye will remain operational. The deputy minister also said that the humanitarian aid will be provided to residents of the Kherson Oblast. The agreement on the opening of these corridors was signed on Thursday between the diplomatic delegations of Russia and Ukraine, after several allegations of irregularities made by Moscow concerning the implementation of the humanitarian corridors. Russian President Vladimir Putin had a phone conversation with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron and stressed that his troops are doing everything possible to preserve the lives of civilians in Ukraine. After 24 days of the special military operation in Donbass, the Russian president stressed that the instruction to all commanders is to preserve and protect the lives of civilians, and that military actions are focused on military objectives. It was also reported that the Russian Vice Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Vershinin, held talks with a delegation of the United Nations on the humanitarian situation in Ukraine and Donbass, in particular on everything concerning the organization of the humanitarian corridors. The militia of the Donetsk and Luhansk People's Forces gave a report issued from the Joint Control and Coordination Center of the ceasefire regime and confirmed the number of casualties in the last day and also the progress in the takeover of Mariupol in the southeast of Ukraine. According to the military report, in Donetsk, 15 civilians were wounded by the actions of troops loyal to Kiev. A report issued by the Ministry of Health of the Independent Republic of Donbass, published on the official channels of Telegram and several national media. Likewise, it became known that in Luhansk, the Ukrainian armed forces lost 40 soldiers amid clashes, according to Ivan Filoponenko, the official representative of the Luhansk militia, who also reported the loss of material, military equipment, and ammunition. From the Joint Center, it was reported that the Ukrainian troops continue to terrify the civilians in Mariupol, where the People's Militia have gained ground. The Control Center officials reported that they have deployed an operation to safeguard civilian dwellings and neutralize Ukrainian extremists who insist on attacking the civilian population. Citizens of Bulgaria gathered to show their displeasure and express their neutral and anti-military position on the conflict taking place between Russia and Ukraine since mid-February. The demonstration took place in front of the Defense Ministry headquarters and then moved to the Council of Representatives building, where there was a meeting between the Bulgarian Prime Minister Kirill Petkov and the U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Demonstrators rejected the attempt of foreign powers to decide the future of their nation and stated that Bulgaria should serve as a diplomatic mediator and not as a military force in the country. After the meeting, Petkov said his country will be able to keep calm by showing itself as an ally of NATO and raising its defense level together with other member countries. Austin also proclaimed the creation of a combat group led by Bulgaria in the face of the Ukrainian crisis. Zimbabwe is already counting the cost of the faraway conflicts between Russia and Ukraine, with a ripple effect expected on not only fuel prices but also the agricultural inputs, which will adversely affect farmer viability. The southern African nation imports hundreds of thousands of tons of wheat and grain from the two nations annually and relies on Russia for critical agricultural inputs, all of which could be held up by the conflict. Soaring global commodity prices due to the ongoing crisis between Russia and Ukraine will make it more difficult to assist those less vulnerable. Currently, Russia and Ukraine constitute 65% of the external wheat supplies, and the longer the conflict between the two nations goes on, the more precarious Zimbabwe's situation becomes. Zimbabwe has the option to procure wheat from North America, yet that will be at significantly higher prices.
Russia is a major supplier of fertilizer as well. So it means as we go into winter production, as also we prepare for the 2022-23 summer season, we are going to feel that effect, especially in the prices of those commodities, and also especially when we start to see shortages, it also impacts then agriculture.
In Spain, the National Federation of Fishermen's Guilds announced late on Friday night that the fishing fleet will remain on strike and will be anchoring port until next Wednesday, March 23rd, due to the increase in fuel prices. According to a release from the organization's president, Basilio Otero, currently the sustainability of the fishing sector lies in the hands of the Spanish Minister of Agriculture, Fishing and Food, Luis Planas. Due to the stagnation of activities, the fishing fleets and some fish markets are forced to stop their operations. For this reason, the organization expressed the importance of establishing immediate proposals, otherwise the fishing sector could suffer strong consequences. A meeting between representatives of the Federation and the Minister of Agriculture and Fisheries is also scheduled for March 23rd.
The fish that comes from here, from the area of the Gulf of Cadiz, where to yesterday they were fishing, and from tomorrow they will no longer be fishing.
In Spain, workers in the transport sector remain on strike after 6 consecutive days. The indefinite strike comes in rejection of high fuel prices and demand for better working conditions. The strike began Monday, March 14th, in the framework of a call by the Platform for the Defense of the Road Freight Transport Sector. This Saturday has gone smoothly after Friday's protest resulted in 29 arrests, 330 people charged, and 714 convoys escorted by the Spanish Civil Guard. The government is expected to meet this Monday, March 21st, with the representative organizations of the sector under the threat of new actions organized by the association, who are informed they will remain on strike until their demands are met. We have more news coming up after a final short break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Algerian government described as a betrayal against the Sahrawi people Spain's decision of granting Morocco autonomy over the territories of Western Sahara. The government of Algeria expressed its discontent at the decision of the president of the Spanish government, Pedro Sanchez, who sent a letter to the King of Morocco, Mohammed VI, in which the Spanish head of state said the Moroccan project for Western Sahara is the most serious, realistic, and plausible proposal for the solution of the controversy over the territory. In this regard, government authorities summoned their ambassador in Madrid, Said Moussi, in light of the change in Madrid's policy on Western Sahara. Algeria sees the measure as a second historical betrayal by Spain, which in 1975 signed with Morocco and Mauritania an agreement to abandon the territory, leaving it mainly the property of Morocco. The Polisario Front joined in the rejection and warned about Pedro Sanchez's decision to legitimize the repression, war crimes, and crimes against humanity committed by Morocco against the sub-Saharan people. The Polisario Front and the government of the Sahrawi Arab Democratic Republic considered the backing of Sanchez's government to the autonomy proposal of Morocco a concession to Rabat's blackmail. They further describe it as a very dangerous deviation which violates international law and legitimizes the repression and crimes committed against the Sahrawi people. In a broad 6-point release, the Polisario Front and the government of the Sahrawi Republic showed their astonishment and rejection to Spain's decision, the administering power of a territory pending to be decolonized and first responsible for the suffering of its people. The front asked political forces from Spain to put pressure on the government to correct this serious mistake and to assume its responsibilities.
Le
Spain recognized the serious and credible efforts of Morocco within the framework of the United Nations to find a mutually acceptable solution, as Spain has already been doing in a high-level meeting of 2008, 2012 and 2015, and in line with Resolution 2702, to cite one of them, from the United Nations Security Council. And in this sense, Spain considers that the autonomy initiative presented in 2007 is the most serious, realistic, and credible basis for the resolution of this dispute.
At least 23 people died after a bus crashed into a lorry in eastern Tanzania. A police chief in the eastern region of Morogoro said the accident occurred in Melela Kibaoni, some 200 kilometers west of the coastal city and economic hub Dar es Salaam. President Samia Suluhu presented her condolences on Twitter and urged road users to adhere to traffic rules. Tanzania has seen an increase in fatal traffic accidents. In February, traffic police chief said 1,245 people had died in road accidents in the country in 2021. In its 2018 global report on road safety, the World Health Organization said Tanzania had reported 3,256 traffic accident deaths in 2016, but estimated there had probably been closer to 16,000.
15 people died immediately. Among them, 7 were men and 6 were women. Dozens of others have been badly injured and rushed to Morogoro Referral Hospital. The total number of injured is still unknown, but due to the nature of the accident, we should expect the death toll to increase.
Polls closed in East Timor after Asia's youngest nation held its 5th presidential election since independence on Saturday, with political stability and economic security at the forefront of voters' minds. The 16 presidential hopefuls include former resistance fighter and incumbent President Francisco Luolo Guterres, as well as independence figure and Nobel laureate Jose Ramos Horta, and a former Catholic priest. Preliminary results are expected later today, but an official result will be announced sometime next week. First hammered by the pandemic, East Timor's economy took another hit last year when Cyclone Seroja struck, killing at least 40 people on its half of the island and transforming communities into wastelands of mud and uprooted trees. In Bangladesh, 8 people are reported missing after the sinking of a lightweight vessel carrying cement and clinker in the port of Chattogram. Coast Guard authorities reported that they managed to rescue 5 of the 13 crew members of the crashed vessel. The Secretary of the Chattogram Port Authorities, Omar Farouk, declared that the search and rescue operations for survivors are still underway in the area. According to local media, the vessel T214 sank in the Gulf of Bengal after a collision with a dredger in the outer docking area. In Guatemala, an unknown percentage of its soil has lost their fertility due to the excessive use of chemical inputs for agricultural production for consumption and export. The high cost of these fertilizers and their impact on nature motivate several families to farm under the agroecological system. Our correspondent Rolanda Garcia brings us more details.
Farmers understand that the use of agrochemicals for crop production is accelerating soil deterioration. Look.
Because we did not use so much poison before, if we seeded beans, it came out normally. Trees bore lots of fruits. We seeded tomatoes. We seeded sandias. But now we can no longer do it naturally. Now we always use herbicides, fungicides, so that we can produce them as well.
This farmer emphasizes that in several regions of the country, the soils have lost their fertility. This problem forces producers to increase the use of agrochemicals.
Because there are parts of the soil that still have strength, and there are parts that no longer have strength. And that part that no longer has strength needs fertilizer. We need to help the soil because if we don't have the soil, the products will not come out.
This farmer points out that the excessive use of agrochemical inputs has caused unknown diseases in crops.
We were producing corn and then the disease hit us, so we couldn't sell anymore. There is a loss. Farmers are losing corn, and now the price of fertilizer is very expensive. So now, where are we going to get the money from?
This farmer emphasizes that agroecological farmers believe that chemical inputs should be abandoned and that instead they should turn to organic agriculture as an alternative to stop soil damage.
That is why we have to avoid it, look for ways to improve our life by avoiding the use of chemicals and dedicate ourselves to the organic. And as you see, the Sunday I have it with what is organic. I also have chicken manure in putting bushes to continue with a good plantation.
In Guatemala, most agricultural production happens under the conventional system. However, efforts to promote organic agriculture are increasing.
Rolanda Garcia, teleSUR, Guatemala.
Thank you, Rolanda, for this report. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Remember, you can join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Telegram. For teleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.